Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, we'll start with a quiz so that, in case you need some energy in the room. Can you guess what all of these products have in common? Can you tell me the brands they belong to? Yeah, the first one, can you tell which specific brand it is? Okay, I thought it's visible. Yeah, it's Fast Track. The second one? No, it's not Tanishq. Yeah, it's Carrot Lane. It's written. So, yeah, so this is the House of Titan. So Titan is a premier lifestyle and retail company, for those of you who don't know, and we're part of the Tata Group. This is a quick view of our journey so far. Now, if you look at the milestones out here, more than the revenue, I think you should look at these as moments when the company decided to understand the customers better than anyone else, right? Each new brand, Tanishq, Zoya, Mia, now we have Beyond. So all of these are new brands, which means new customers, new purchase occasions, new journeys, new data. Now we'll quickly move on to the life cycle of a watch. Again, can anyone guess what would be the first stage in the life cycle of a watch? What would anyone do before you make a watch? What do you need? Yeah. So you need some trend and inspiration, right? So the idea of this slide is to show how each of these stages are boxes where some kind of decision is taken and how data, analytics, and AI can help or play a role in each of these stages of the life cycle. So yeah, so we start with trend and inspiration. Then we move on to portfolio intelligence. So before we decide that, okay, you have a nice idea, but before we decide that we need to make that watch, what would you do? You would see, have similar designs performed well in the past. How are similar designs from competition doing? Right? All of this, right? Where do we have the gaps? Then we move on to the manufacturing or assembly of the watches. Here again, analytics and data can play a huge role in, say, capacity planning, in demand planning, etc. Then we move to the merchandising part of it. That is the right product in the right place. So here again, we play a big role by helping with optimizing the merchandise, by deciding where to place the right product, which are the new catchments that we should tap into. Then we have smarter go-to-market. That's all the marketing that we do. What is the price point at which we should launch the product, all of that. And then finally, there is a continuous intelligence. So we have done all this. We've launched the product. How are they doing? What should we improve? What's not working well? Right? So this is the entire feedback loop. So now what I'll do quickly is I'll take you through some use cases in each of these life cycle stages on how we help Titan take the right decisions. So the first one is about predicting the success of new designs. So very early in this life cycle of a watch, before you even make a prototype, how can you understand how likely is your product to succeed? Like earlier, it used to be largely based on gut instinct, right? So now we have a lot of data. We have like lakhs of SKUs that we have ourselves launched in the past, and we know how they have all performed. We also know how competitor products are doing. So using a combination of the image of the prototype that we want to build and the prototype of the competitor watch and our own portfolio, plus the structured attributes that we have about the watch, using similarity and image algorithms, we can arrive at a success metric. Right? And we say that this is how likely this product is to succeed. And what does this entail? So there is, of course, the data engineering part. And here you have, it's not a typical data that is going to sit inside your warehouse. You have to scout for that data. You may have to scrape data from marketplaces to get the images of your competition. You may have to dig into your old servers to get all the images of your watches. Plus, you need all your performance data as well, and not just sales, sell-through, sales velocity, all of that kind of data as well, right? And then there is the data science part of it. There is an inferencing layer where we're using an LLM to also describe the likelihood of success. And there is the AI engineering and the tooling part of it also, once we deploy it as a tool which a product manager or a design specialist can use. This is another example. So our factory had reached out to us asking, what is the quantity of different types of colors and materials that we need for the next 1 year? Now, that itself is a tough problem to solve because they're asking for a 12-month forecast. Typically, you don't forecast for such a long period of time, right? But we can still do it using our traditional time series models like ARIMA and Profit and all of that. But what we did over here is we added an additional layer where we use deep research to kind of validate the results that we got from our traditional time series forecast. Like if it is saying that rose gold is likely to increase, why is it likely to increase? Because typically what happens is whatever designs that trend in the Western markets and in countries like South Korea, Dubai, etc., they typically, the same thing trends in India maybe 6 months to 12 months down the lane. So there's a lot of data out there which deep research is able to go and glean for us and tell us and help us validate and go and tell the business with confidence that, yeah, our forecast is saying this, but it is also validated with what's happening outside. So this is simple, I would say. It's just a forecasting plus deep research. Okay. Is this an AI-generated image or a real one? How many of you say AI? Okay. This is a real image for a change. And I think most of you didn't raise your hand, so I'm guessing that most people are saying that it's real. Yeah, so this is a tool that we have built in-house where we can make quick creatives for campaigns. This is an example where, which was sent out for the Vietnamese New Year. We do sell watches in the international markets also. And yeah, these are some examples. So again, a very quick use of what's already available using outpainting and some generative AI to create images. Another example is where you can create scripts for campaigns. We do send out a lot of CRM campaigns to customers. And when you want to really personalize it at n equal to 1 level, if you want to personalize to each customer or to each segment, and you might have hundreds of segments, it is not manually possible to sit and write script for each, right? So if you know what kind of campaign you want to run, what kind of segment you want to target, etc., using this tool, and using an LLM, you can quickly generate options. This is another example where you can enhance your website by generating product descriptions from a combination of image and the attributes. Yeah. So these were some examples from the go-to-market stage. Again, simple. It's just prompt engineering plus tooling. There's not very complicated, I would say. Yeah. Now, this is Vakt GPT. And I think we've all been hearing a lot about agentic analytics, and that's where we are headed and all that. Now, this is something which we built almost 3 years back. Of course, this tool has also evolved over a period of time. We built it when ChatGPT came in and initial LLM started coming. So this is nothing but a text-to-SQL engine. Users can go and ask questions, whatever questions you have about the business, and it'll give answers. And this is the architecture. So we have a debriefer node, which understands the question in English, and taking help from a RAG, it passes it on to a SQL executor node, which will execute the query and pass it on to another LLM. If there is an error, that loop will repeat a number of times. If there is no error, it will go to an interpreter node and a visualization agent, and finally, you get a synthesized response. Now, the point where we had to spend the maximum time over here, I would say, is the semantic layer under it, without which this would not work. And that semantic layer was, of course, created over a period of many years. And that was the reason we were able to build this quickly on top of that. This is another example where in our international markets, when we started expanding in Tanishq in the Middle East region, it was already a very competitive market, right? The Malabars, Joy Alukas, Kalyans of the world were already there. So we wanted to know in each catchment, how is Tanishq doing with respect to competition? So we used the Google reviews that are available, did an analysis again. There is an LLM-based application running in the backend, and the store team can quickly see what's working, what's not working for us versus competition. And yeah, I think the example that you're seeing over here is for the US region. Yeah. So in the continuous intelligence stage, again, data engineering is the key pillar, followed by all the business and context that you have to feed in. There is the multi-agent orchestration part, and of course, tool development. So what I wanted to tell through all of these examples is data science as a role is also evolving more into, you can say, an orchestrator kind of a role, where it is not enough to just know how to build a model. It is also important to understand the data engineering layer, the AI engineering layer, and of course, the business and context without which you can't do any kind of solutioning. Okay, now if we talk about the evolution of our AI usage in Titan over a period of time, and I'm sure this is how it is for most of you over here as well. We started off with classical machine learning, deep learning, where you have propensity modeling, forecasting, regression, text mining, image classification, those kind of use cases. Then when the LLMs came in, we started using more of prompt engineering. Text mining was the biggest use case for us. Like I showed you, the catchment wipes tool was one of the first tools that we built using LLMs. Deep research, that simple chatbots and scripts for calling customers, all of these. Then came multimodal LLMs. So we also started getting into use cases like enriching an item master, for instance. Like typically, if you in any organization, the product master might have just a very few columns, right? But if it is really able to capture all the information about the product, like in our case, we have jewelry, right? So if you're able to capture the motif of a particular jewelry, which is currently not there in our item master, that can again help in multiple ways, in better merchandising, better marketing, and so on, right? So we move to multimodal LLMs. And of course, in the future, we are looking at more of agentic use cases. And of course, the foundation for all of this is good data. Now, the business context and the AI engineering part, as well as the governance and guardrails. Okay. Looking ahead. So what is the market actually telling us? So 60% of the data science job posting are now referencing AI. 73% of them are also in the mid to senior positions. I think we all of us know all of this. 1 in 3 of these job postings are also asking for knowledge on LLMs, prompt engineering, RAGs, vector databases, and so on. And there is this shift towards agentic analytics. On a lighter note, I think I would actually be very happy if this shift happens, because even now for our team, 50% of our bandwidth goes on answering simple questions on data. You know, we might on one Friday evening, we might just get a call from a CEO, and he might just want to know why is the sales in this. We need to tell the board that why is the sales of this particular product coming down, right? If there was actually an agent which would answer that question for him, then our bandwidth can be used for, I think, working on better products and better solutions. But jokes apart, the most important thing over there is to have a solid semantic layer, and along with the ontologies and the knowledge layer and all of it for an agent to work properly. I don't know where we are with respect to that, while there are efforts in that direction. Okay. So I would say the 3 pillars of a future-proof data scientist would be, the first one would be an AI-powered data scientist, that is, be up to date about what's happening, learn how to use all these tools, all these models, everything that's available to us. Go full stack, have an understanding about ML ops, data ops, all of it. But the most important part is to be a human-first strategist. So if I look back in the last 2-3 years, and if I'm trying to see what made me successful, I would say it would have been the ability to decide what questions to work on, when to say no, how well are you able to explain your model to, say, a CFO in 30 seconds, work under ambiguity, all of these, more than your usage of AI, right? So I would like to end on this note. AI changes the tools, but the core skills still remain the same. So all of that business orientation, creativity, curiosity, storytelling, customer centricity, all of this is important. But AI has leveled the tech playing field for us. But and hence working in ambiguity, being able to take decisions in uncertainty, all of these things become more important. Along with some new skills like systems-based thinking, context engineering, and judgment, trust, and governance. Thank you.